The blood is warm as it flows into my mouth and down my throat. It washes over my tongue, and I savor the full taste and experience of my prey. It covers all of my taste buds, and I find myself falling into feral ecstasy. A father, out and about with his mistress. I taste the zest of fear in the stream and realize how I screwed up the kill. It always tasted better when they least expected it, when they don't know that this would be the final nights of their pathetic, short lives. I feel a grip on my shoulder. "Harry," I heard her say. I shrug her hand off and continue my meal. I then hear her voice next to my ear. "That's enough." Her voice has some bite to it, even for me to realize that the fun is over and it was time to go. I place my hand on the top of his head, get a solid grip, and then twist my wrist. His life ends with a wet snap, and the light leaves his eyes. I stand naked in front of the mirror. My muscles coil and ripple as I flex them, and my body contorts at will. My skin is milky white, without blemish or freckle. My teeth and claws are sharp enough to cut through any material, and I take a gander into my eyes. Two pits of absolute darkness. I am perfect, the culmination of thousands of years of evolution into the ultimate hunter, the apex predator. It is with sadness that I have to pervert this perfection in order to blend in with the whelp that have the audacity to claim rule of this planet. I begin to change in order to continue blending in with these vermin. My skin begins to darken until I stop glowing, and I become a more human shade. My teeth begin to fall out as the molars and incisors push them from my mouth, and my smile grows into something that can disarm them. My pupils shrink and are then surrounded by a red ring as the iris grows. The final touch is the hair. I feel it itch and then burn across my scalp. A carpet of jet black grows across my head in a matter of minutes. While I find the human form absolutely revolting, to them I am irresistible, akin to something that could be found in one of our Hollywood movies. It makes the hunt easier in the modern age. It causes a sense of melancholy for me. In the older times, I never needed to change for them. They came on their quests to come and slay the horrid beast that inhabited their lands, and I didn't fear death. Their twisted sense of honor and duty made them easy and, at some points, fun. Some of them put up a mighty fight, even when it ended the same way every time. It still made me want, no longer. There are no warriors that are eager to prove themselves against a true challenge in the name of their kings or gods. Now I have to work. Now the human chattel must be lured, put at ease, and then slaughtered. I hear the door creak. "That's now," she says as she presses her body onto my back and wraps her arms around me. "Which part?" I ask as I grab her arms and pull her closer to me. "The hair," she says as she runs her hands along my shoulders and up my neck. In the millennia that I've known her, I have learned to love her. I have learned to hate her. I have learned to live. I have learned to die. I have learned what it means to be perfect. I have learned what it means to be truly flawed. She is my master. Every time she touches me for a brief moment, I am taken back to the square where I first met her, and she tied me to her as her servant. I'm lying on my back. The hole in my stomach has grown numb as the cold begins to take me. I look over to see the broken arrow in my left shoulder. I look to the sky and see the smoke billow into the clouds as the birds flee. I can hear the muffled voices of the wounded and dying around me, the distant clangs of swords, the heavy crashes of iron on wood as it splinters, as the axes crash into the shields and men. I try to pray, but my mind has become clouded with fog as I realize that my pleas for heaven would fall on deaf ears. I wiggle my fingers and am pleasantly surprised that I can still move them. I try and lift my arms. Agony fills my being. But it is an agony that I can bear, as I claw towards a pillar so that I can see some form of spectacle before I meet my end. I sit up and look at the sight, the fall of my home, what you would know as Constantinople. I see a man standing on top of a barricade, waving the imperial banner, only for him to be cut down by the invaders. Men, women, and children run amok, trying to escape the anarchy, only to be hacked apart or captured. Nobody understood what was happening or why it was happening. We had weathered the Saracen storm for centuries, a bulwark against the Sultan attempting to make his invasion into the north. These men weren't Saracens. They were Christians. I still don't understand. I wasn't of noble birth. Therefore, I wasn't entitled to ask questions on the matter, nor was I smart enough to understand the political ambitions of the powerful. Centuries later, I would read why they destroyed my home. It was the nature of humans. Greed would always lead to bloodshed throughout the course of their circular history. In that moment, I understood what failure looked like in its most complete form. I had failed to protect what I had sworn my life to. Everything I knew and loved was lost in a night, and in those final moments I felt truly empty. That's when I saw her for the first time, walking through the carnage as if she were out for a stroll to the market. The invaders run past her as if she wasn't even there. It was then she meets my eyes. Even though we are separated by the square, the bodies, and the fires, I can still feel those eyes. The red rings swallowed as her pupils grow and become black as tar, drilling into my soul, analyzing everything I had ever done and everything that I was going to do. She begins to walk towards me, flowing through the scene like a specter, the same bored smile cresting her face that would never leave as long as I've known her. The smile is terrifying, and her seemingly perfect teeth grow into jagged white fangs. She sits next to me like a child who wants to play a game. "Hello," I heard her say, her voice clear as if I could hear it in my head. I tried to speak, but I realized that my mouth is filled with blood, and the only sound I can make is a wet cough and a wheeze. I don't know why, but I reach my hand out, and to my surprise, she takes it and lets it rest in her lap. "Do you want to live?" I heard her speak again as she gently caressed my hand. "Yes," I managed to choke out. My throat is dry, and it is difficult to speak. She turns to face me. Her black eyes are reflective pits, and her face wears a look of amusement as she licks each and every one of her fangs. "And what will you be willing to do to live through this?" Her voice has changed. It is now something more primal, wild, evil. "Anything," I say, as the black spots in my vision begin to grow and cover my sight. I can feel the cold spread over my body. "Very well," she says, as I feel her cover my body, and her teeth finding a home in my neck. Even after 1,000 years, the wound feels as fresh as the day she gave it to me. I stand there and feel her grip tighten as she hugs me and runs her hands over my chest. "You've been getting more audacious," she says, releasing me and placing her hand on the small of my back. I find myself unable to formulate a response as I lose control of my body. "Not again. Please don't let it happen again." I'm pushed to my knees by a weight that is so heavy it feels like my bones are about to turn to powder. She stands above me, placing a clawed finger under my chin and bringing my eyes to meet hers. She hasn't changed them back. The black holes continue to swallow me. I feel her cut into my skin as I struggle to keep my head up. "Remember what you are," she says as I begin to grunt under the pressure. "You are mine. You do what I bid. Don't think because we've been attracted to each other for all this time that I will hesitate to put you down." She continues. As the pressure increases and I feel her claw digging into my throat, I manage to clench out as my newly grown teeth begin to break from the strain. You, she says. Her empty face briefly crosses with curiosity. I understand, I whisper. I can feel my shoulders begin to dislocate and my clavicle turn inward as I am driven against the hard stone floor. Her eyes soften, and I feel the pressure relent. Oh, you know I can't hurt you when you look at me like that, she says as she drifts to her knees and puts her face inches from mine. I stare back at her, trying to mask the hatred in my heart. I just don't think you understand how much I care for you is all. When I tell you that it's time to leave, then we leave. It isn't up for discussion, argument, or debate. One day, you will understand. But until then, I have to keep you under the yoke. She cups her face with my hands, and I see the black begin to shrink and the red circles trace around her pupils. She kisses me deeply, stands, and then leaves me on my knees. I begin to regain feeling in my limbs, and the bones and tendons snap back into place. It is then, when I am filled with emotion, that I have learned all too well throughout my time. Hate. I hate her. I hate being her puppet, her slave, and I make myself a promise. Should the opportunity present itself, I shall be the one to take her life. I leave the bathroom and join her again in the common area. There's a tribunal tomorrow night, she says, glancing up from her phone to look at me. She's transferred back into human form and looks completely unimposing. Her short and petite physique, complete with dark red hair, something that would disarm even the most veteran hunter. She used the trick before on hunts, using her seduction and other subtle skills to her advantage. I, on the other hand, prefer the more direct approach. While I've used my fair share of the more devious methods to secure a meal, there is something inside me that feels so right about watching these worms realize how weak they truly are before meeting their end at my hands. That's strange, there's the second one this year, I say, as I make my way over to the alcohol pantry and begin to make myself a drink. I decide on the Bowmore and begin to pour 2 glasses. Yes, I want you present as well. They're calling in everyone from this side of the country, she says, taking the glass and having a sip. I take a swig from mine. Say what you will about the humans, they know how to make some damn fine liquor. Any idea what it's about? I ask, finishing the drink and pouring another. I think it's the rise of hunter activity on the East Coast. Oh no, bunch of hunters running around with crosses trying to vanquish the demons that haunt their villages, I say sarcastically, placing my hands over my chest. As amusing as I find it, it's in response to the attacks in the West. They managed to burn down a whole community in New Mexico. The Californians are getting more exposed in their response to these attacks. I'm still confused as to what this has to do with us. I assume it's for another call for clan unification, as unlikely as that is. I snort a laugh. A call for unification wasn't just unlikely, it was impossible. The Western clans made that clear after the war, killing over 100 Eastern vampires in Mississippi. While we made peace and 20 years have passed, there is still no love lost between the two sides. Either way, we've been called to attend, and I'll need you there in case things get messy, she says, caressing my cheek. You would think that the meeting of the most powerful true-born vampires in the United States would be in a location with more panache, and you would be dead wrong. The cliché of meeting in a castle or a mansion was actually an ingenuous play in order to keep the humans in the dark of our truer nature. Instead, we meet in the woods, the swamps, the caves and tunnels, the places where they don't think the powerful lurk. We step onto the porch of the cabin and open the door. From there, we are greeted by 2 thralls carrying assault rifles. Identification, ma'am, one said, not moving from his post. She opens her hand and draws a line across it, which opens a thin cut in her palm. She then places her hand over his and lets a few drops of blood fall. He licks his hand clean and then grows very wary.
Apologies, mistress. We can't be too careful nowadays,
he says with a slight bow. I understand, but please try not to take up any more of our time. We are in a bit of a hurry, she says as she licks her hand, the wound healing almost instantly. They step aside and we make our way to the cave entrance. It's barely wide enough for me to stand, let alone walk, and so we are forced to stoop. We make our way through the cave system, weaving in and out of passages and underground river systems. The cave system finally opens to the pit, a mass cavernous space, and in the center, a circle filled with the council. On the far wall of the cavern stands the tower, and carved in stone, the hierarchy. At the top, a full set of teeth, symbolizing trueborn, vampires who were born of 2 vampires. Underneath, a set of 6 teeth. My class, Rivka, were taken by a true vampire. Below that is the set of 2 teeth, thralls, mindless beasts controlled by their hunger and the boots of the hierarchy. She stands at the edge of the circle, joined by the 3 other true bloods. Behind them stands their Rivka and thrall bodyguards, heavily armored and wary, analyzing each other. While it was discouraged for a fight to break out in these meetings, it wasn't uncommon that blood would be shed between rival parties. The other True Bloods brought dozens of their soldiers, each with centuries of experience in combat, while I stand alone at my master's side.
They've gotten more brazen. We had them at our mercy not even a decade ago.
An ancient voice rasped from under a jet-black hood from the far side of the circle. That's always been your problem, Bogdan. You've always been so blinded by your own influence that you can't conceive of the mud-born acting of their own. Another says, annoyance clearly reflected in her tone.
Of course, you're terrified of the vermin, Isabel. You were forced out of Spain centuries ago, while I never let them get so powerful.
Bogdan said, hacking out a laugh that sounds like steel over a wheat stone. Watch your tone, Venetti, before I remove your tongue, Isabel says, rising to her feet.
Calm it. It'll be the last thing you try to do.
As Bogdan spreads his arms and his claws begin to grow on the tips of his fingers, I hear growls, the cocking of firearms, and the drawing of swords and knives as the rival entourages prepare for a fight. They begin to shed their human facades and change, turning into monsters in a matter of seconds. I step in front of my master and draw my own weapon, my Gladius and H&K. I flip the safety off, and time begins to slow down. I feel the pressure in my mouth as my human teeth are pushed from my gums to be replaced by my fangs. She begins to laugh. It's not a harsh or mean-spirited laugh, but a genuine belly laugh, as if she heard a reference to an inside joke that only she knew the meaning of. The laugh grows in volume until it is the only sounds that can be heard in the pit.
There's something funny, Dido.
I hear a voice from the far end of the pit. The figure and his entourage haven't risen, even among the commotion. They remain kneeling, no doubt gripping their weapons, ready to mop up the slaughter that was about to take place. No, it's Koto. Nothing at all, she says as she continues laughing. Bogdan and Isabel stare daggers into her as she finally composes herself. It's just funny that we still let those little spats erupt while our kind is being killed in the hundreds, she says with a slight giggle. None of us are immortal, and these humans are getting more clever, more organized. While it might not be on the levels of the expulsion or diaspora, we need to take heed and deal with the threat. We've been doing their work for them without aversion. All they need to do now is conquer, she says as her eyes become stony. She steps in front of me and into the center of the circle. How ironic. You speak of unity when you have nothing to contribute. You want war, but you have no armies. What exactly do you plan to do? Isabel mumbles as she spits her human teeth on the ground. Just because I don't keep my dogs on a leash doesn't mean they aren't hard at work. I've placed them near the heart of our enemies, in their organizations, their churches, their homes. They have given me the information that has kept us all alive, and more importantly, 2 steps ahead of them. So please, for your sake, do not question my intelligence again, she says. They open the circle as if a prophet has entered the cave. They have united. Their churches have joined their organizations. They work together and keep us separated. This is the time to join forces and call to unification. The silence groans as the air begins to relax and the weapons are put away. I then begin to hear it. A distant thump. At first, I think it's just the wind, but the thump grows and gains speed and volume. I'm not the only one either, and we all focus our ears to hear the sound.
It's not possible. I heard Bogdan rasp. We are betrayed. I heard its Koto whisper in shock.
I then hear the unmistakable pops of gunfire. The tunnel entrance is over 2 miles of winding twists and river systems from the cave, but it won't take them long to figure out the way here. If what its Kotal said was true, then they already know where to look.
We must leave before they burn us out.
I heard Isabel gasp, straining to keep the panic from her voice as she begins moving towards the opposite end of the pit.
We will stand and fight. No mongrel will end my line today.
I hear Bogdan retort indignantly as he moves to intercept her. If they found us, we can bet that they blessed the river systems. The only way out is through, I hear its Kotal say. He draws his tomahawk and whirls it in his hand.
We have the darkness on our side. No human can see in these caves. They are in our territory. Let us show them why we are the dominant species.
He continues and waves his hand, backing into the stone with his entourage, taking up positions in the ceiling and behind the stalactites. The others follow suit, and we prepare our ambush. It isn't long before we begin to hear them, smell them, taste them. Their odor, their feelings, their fear. They aren't our typical prey. Their fear is dulled by their adrenaline and experience. Their steps are more measured and deliberate. They move almost silently, with the only obvious noise being their equipment. Hunters. I hear her voice in my head. Lots of them. I responded in turn. They move into the pit. They carry night vision, stakes, and shotguns. The holy cross carved into their chest plates and helmets. My head begins the dull quake if I focus on it for too long. It won't save them. While they'll prove to be a challenge, this won't be the end of me. Hunters are used to fighting thralls, rooting them out in their dens and houses. I feel a smile cut across my face. We wait until the entire raiding party enters the pit. They outnumber us 3-1. They didn't bring nearly enough.
Come then, Palinkayo. We are starving.
Its Kotal howls and leaps from his spot into the spikes. They all looked up in shock as we descended. A blanket of teeth, claws, swords, and gunfire falls upon the hapless vermin as they begin to comprehend their folly. I must say, the reaction time is impressive, and in less than a second, they begin their counterattack. The air around us erupts into flames.
Dragon's breath.
I hear a thrall shout, and they begin to scream as his body catches fire, and he hits the floor, writhing in agony, until a hunter finishes him off with a stake through his head. The hunter is dispatched by Arifka, Antonio, who sends a kick into the hunter's head with so much force that it flies off of his shoulders. I land on the ground, roll, and drive my gladius to the stomach of one, and using his body as a shield to put down another 2 with my pistol. Shrieks morph into death rattles, into silence, before you can comprehend what exactly you heard. For my kind, it is agonizingly slow. The hunters train to try and counter our movements and reflexes, but they can't counter our cognition. When time moves at a snail's pace, you have all the time in the world to plan your next move. And this makes combat into something more akin to a game rather than survival. As I watch my shots connect to the bodies, their flesh ripping and hearing the sound of their organs rupture, I see its Koto land in front of me and take 3 hunters out at once, moving with the grace of a homicidal ballerina, movements so easy that he can't contain the smile on his face. I see Bogdan and Isabel take on their own hunters with similar efficiency. And soon, the room goes from its crescendo of noise and violence to a deafening silence that makes the concept of sound seem like a far-removed myth, save for the whimpers of the wounded and dying. The fight is over almost as quickly as it begins, a hurricane of screams and blood as the dozens of combatants fall in a matter of extended seconds. To the untrained eye, it's a blur of motion moving in a dizzying rhythm, a liquid dance of thrusts, parries, gunfire, displaced limbs, and organs. The Trueborns meet in the circle. Itzcoatl walks with a limp to the center, reaches down, and pulls a stake from his thigh, observing it with mild amusement, and then tosses it over his shoulder as if it were a toy. Bogdan tears a piece of cloth from his robe and wraps it around what's left of his right arm. Half of Isabel's face is burned off, and I see the charcoal black muscle and bone contract as she tries to speak. She then falls back into silence, realizing that the effort required to talk would not be worth the energy. I notice that she isn't among them. I feel my pulse begin to quicken again. I scan the ground, the walls, the ceiling. I feel my soul begin to wail. I can't find her. I search through the bodies that cover the ground like a twitching rug. I see the dismembered bodies of hunters, thralls, and even a few Rivka. After a few minutes of searching, I do something that I have only done twice before. Something that caused her to warrant only the worst of the punishments I suffered at her hand. I call her name. Dido, I whisper. I stand in silence as I wait for the pressure to begin. I start sweating, shaking, quaking in anticipation, but it doesn't come. Instead, I see a shift among the bodies and one lone, shaking hand raise. I rush over and uncover her. She looks pale, and her mouth is covered in blood. She's shaking and winces in pain as I pull her from the pile. I lay her flat on the cold stone floor. I notice the hole in her chest and the stake buried at the bottom. I begin to panic and look back to the circle for help. It's empty, and now the only thing I'm surrounded by is death and silence. I feel her hand caress my face. It's freezing. She pulls my face towards her, and I stare into her jet black eyes. My sweet. She coughs weakly, and I feel it all leave. All the hate, the rage that I carried for so many years, the murderous thoughts, the plans, the schemes, the maybes, the almosts. Now I stare down the only thing that gave me a purpose. You're wounded. Save your strength. Don't try and talk. I rasp out as I pull the stake out and formulate a plan to get us out of here. I hear them again. The stomping of feet, the clamoring of equipment, the shouting of men who are out for blood. There's more this time. No doubt to come and reinforce their attack party. They're maybe a mile out and closing. You need to leave. I'm not leaving you, I say firmly, reassuring both her and myself. I'm not asking, she says, and her hand begins to close. I don't care. I'm not going to leave you for these animals to take you. I don't care what you do. I don't care how much it hurts. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm going to stay. An eternity passed, and a smile flashes across her face. Drink, she says, holding her wrist up to my mouth. What? You will become trueborn, more powerful than you can imagine, she says, pressing her skin against my lips. It is forbidden, I say. You're ready. It is then when it hits me. This is it. These final minutes. These will be the last few moments that she spends. I then remember my promise. I would be the one to end her. Without a second thought, I bite. I feel her entering me, drop by drop, I taste every single thing she ever did. Her wants, her needs, her fears. My vision begins to blur as I relive her life. Thousands of years in less than a second. Every emotion she ever felt, everything she ever thought. She goes still, and I lift my mouth. My body feels different. I can feel a new power coursing through my system. Intense pain as the rest of my molars are shoved from their place, and my mouth is filled completely with fangs. I am now true-born, slave to no one. The true top of the food chain. My sight is filled with strange visions. Seconds, minutes into the future. Different futures. They converge on one spot, the mouth of the cave. I can hear them. They've slowed their advance, moving more cautiously as they survey the chaos of the previous battle. I face the mouth of the cave and fall to my knees, preparing to meet them. What will they think as they begin to separate? Their final thoughts as I tear them apart. It doesn't matter. It is time to feed.
Thank you for listening and delving with me into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you